SABC, host broadcaster of the G20 South Africa 2025.
Now, of course, join us for SABC News' G20 special coverage, during which we'll be coming to you live from Nasrec tomorrow and Sunday. Our team bringing you comprehensive coverage on our G20 show, including updates on road closures with Rob Byrne. You can also stream us live on SABC Plus and watch us live on SABC News' pop-up channel. Make sure you tune in to get all of the latest news relating to the Leaders Summit. Talking about that Leaders Summit, let's get into this interview now. The US has warned Pretoria not to make a G20 declaration without its presence at the Leaders Summit. Now, the US has agreed its chargé d'affaires in Pretoria will attend the declaration handover ceremony as a formality, but South Africa's presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, says that President Ramaphosa will not hand over the G20 presidency to a chargé d'affaires after the US reiterated that it would not attend any G20 discussions this weekend. Africa's first G20 summit will include representatives of 42 countries. To unpack this development and more, we are joined by Professor and Senior Research Fellow at the Center for Advancement of Scholarship at the University of Pretoria, Professor Danny Bradlow. Prof, great to have you. Thanks very, very much for your time. Let's quickly get into it. We don't have too much time, but in terms of the latest developments around the US and a chargé d'affaires and almost a bit of a spat between the White House press secretary and the US and South Africa's president, and what she had to say about that. Talk to us. What are you thinking of this?
Well, the thing is, the US is a member of the G20 and has the right to send whatever delegation it wants. So it's or not to attend, it has that right as well. And so far, it seemed like President Trump had said that the US would not attend until it seemed to have realized that that would mean there would be a changeover ceremony at the end of the summit where President Ramaphosa would be forced to hand over, which is a symbolic handover, to hand over the leadership to an empty chair. And so now they're suggesting they'll send a relatively junior official, not an extremely junior one, but a relatively junior one for a summit. It seems discussions are still ongoing, and it makes the US look rather silly, I think, to be just sending such an official and not participating in the meetings.
And this is the reality, because as they have re-emphasized, they will not be participating in any meetings. This will just be a symbolic handover. A chargé d'affaires, I mean, this has never happened before. And you know, our presidential spokesperson saying and stating that the president will not be handing over to a chargé d'affaires. What do you think about that? I mean, can they hand it over? I mean, are they within their rights, America, to get anybody to go there and accept it?
They are within their rights, and in a sense, it doesn't have to be a handover ceremony. The changeover will happen whether there's a ceremony or not. And so I suppose unless the US and South Africa can reach some sort of understanding on what will happen, the end result might be that the meetings close and the US just takes over without there being any kind of ceremonial handover. The more interesting issue will be, will the US actually not participate, and will it use its influence with some other delegations to block the consensus that's needed to issue a declaration at the end of the summit? Without the US there, in some ways it's easier to reach a declaration, to reach a consensus on the declaration, but the US does have other friends there and can certainly work with them to block that consensus if that's what they decided to do.
So this is a very interesting point that you're raising here, because perhaps maybe you can talk us through this. Out of all of the meetings and the summits that have taken place, there's never been, from what I have researched, an occasion where a declaration has not gone forward. I think it was at one of the forums or the gatherings where it was very close to not adopting a declaration, but some form of a document was adopted. But this is a very different situation. And as you say, I mean, you know, the US still has their contacts and their allies that are going to be present there. So this could unfortunately put a very dark cloud over this if a declaration is not adopted. What are your views on that?
I mean, it's a symptom of the problems with multilateral cooperation in the world at the moment. It happened before, when the Ukraine war started, that it was very difficult to get any kind of a document from the G20. But in this case, I don't think anyone would blame South Africa. It would be a sad development for the world, but South Africa can't be, I mean, the US is entitled to take whatever position it wants, including the most blocking position if that's what it chooses. And South Africa can't be blamed for the fact that the US has decided to be difficult. What will be the thing to watch is there a president's summary, a chair's summary that's issued that explains what was agreed amongst most of the members, what wasn't agreed, and what the steps going forward might be. But if there's no declaration because of the US action, I think the country that will receive the criticism for that will be the US, not South Africa.
Who, by the way, are the hosts next year. So that puts us into a very difficult situation. I mean, you've had jabs coming from US President Donald Trump calling this the G100. Then our president said, hang on, it's maybe the G1 million. And, you know, there's just been all of these little sideline jabs taking place. But these are very serious issues that are under discussion here. And, you know, some of these declarations include some of the greatest problems that our world is going through when you look at those that are present, those that are invited, and the organizations that are here. So my question to you on this one is, do we feel that the group is perhaps at a point where there's a little bit of structural reform that may need to take place after what we're seeing taking place here?
There is a process called the G20 at 20 to look at the G20, to think about, has it become too broad in the issues that it covers? Is the structure becoming too cumbersome? And so there's a good case for thinking through change. The problem is, in the current environment, that becomes very difficult. And the second point to keep in mind is the summit is really the tip of the iceberg, in a sense, if I could put it that way, in that there have been 130 odd meetings in South Africa this year of various working groups at the technical level of government officials on a broad range of issues. I think there are 22 or something different working groups that have been created dealing with issues like air quality, health, sustainable development, finance, infrastructure. And within some of those groups, at least, there has been some progress made this year. Not a lot, in the sense that there's not a lot of commitments, but the G20 doesn't have the power to make countries, to bind countries and to force them to do anything. So it is a voluntary set of agreements that come out of this, and we'll have to see whether countries are serious and will take that forward or not. And that will be part of South Africa's challenge going forward, is to take what they think is most important out of this meeting and to push it in other international forums besides the G20 as well.
Yeah. All right. I mean, Prof, there's so many issues, whether we talk global debt, energy transition, AI governance, trade tensions, climate financing, you name it, it's all under discussion. There's a very quick question before I let you go I would like to ask you, is that it's quite interesting what you said. The US is a member and it is their prerogative to be there and send whoever they want to. So my question to you is, there's a little speculation as well in terms of South Africa's participation next year because of the US being a host, and some feeling perhaps maybe they won't invite South Africa to be a part of it. Is that even their role? Can they do something like that? Or is South Africa, as a member, entitled to go wherever this is happening?
I would say South Africa is absolutely entitled to be there. And under the G20, it's run by what's called the Troika, which is the past president, the current president, and the future president, which means that next year South Africa will be part of the Troika. And I think if the US tried to exclude South Africa, the other members of the G20 would object very strongly and say that's completely counter to the principles of the G20 or the way in which it operates.
Yeah, and the UK, of course, taking over from the US. So it would be quite interesting to see how the UK and the US handle that situation with South Africa in the middle.
Right.
Goodness me, Prof. It's going to be an interesting weekend. Prof. Danny Bradlow, thanks for weighing in on the conversation. The Professor and Senior Research Fellow for the Center for Advancement of Scholarship at the University of Pretoria, speaking about the upcoming G20 Summit. Besides all of the issues that are happening between, the host country and that's taking over the presidency, the USA, there's so many important issues which we'll get into as the broadcast continues.